Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt your legs just not quite right? Maybe they feel, I don't know, heavier than they should or they're persistently sore. Does standing for any length of time feel like, well, a major effort?
Mm-hmm.
And what about stairs? Are they tougher than they used to be?
Right.
What if I told you that, according to the material we're diving into today, something you might be doing right now, maybe even taking with the best intentions to help your health, could be directly contributing to that feeling?
It's a pretty arresting claim the source makes, isn't it?
It really is. It says there are two worst vitamins you might be popping right now that could be quietly undermining your leg strength, maybe even speeding up muscle loss after 60.
Mm.
And these are things often marketed as beneficial.
Exactly. And that's the core mystery we're here to unravel for you today. We're looking at how common foods and, yeah, some really surprising supplements might be impacting your mobility. We're drawing only from the insights in the source material provided.
That's right. Welcome to this deep dive. We're really digging into excerpts from a video transcript, focusing on its specific view on what negatively impacts leg health and strength as we get older.
Our mission is simple. Go beyond the surface claims, pull out the critical insights presented in this source, and understand exactly why it argues certain things might cause that weariness, the swelling, stiffness, maybe even pain in your legs.
Yeah, and this source material, it's our map for this whole exploration.
Mm-hmm.
The source really sets a stage that challenges some, well, some common assumptions, I think. Its basic premise is that certain everyday foods, things we eat without a second thought, and yes, even those vitamins that seem so healthy, well, when they're consumed incorrectly or maybe just too much, they can act as quiet enemies to keeping your legs strong and functional after 60.
Right. It argues they contribute significantly to muscle loss, which we're already fighting naturally, right?
Aye.
And they increase joint strain, leading to general instability.
So we're going to walk you through exactly what the source claims. We'll outline the specific items it flags and the reasons it gives, based only on the information we have in this material.
Exactly. It provides a very particular lens, a specific viewpoint, to look at everyday choices and their potential long-term hit on your lower body. So let's start with the first category the source talks about, what it calls the culinary culprits.
All right, let's dive into those daily habits the source suggests might be chipping away at your leg strength. It lists them in a countdown, starting from number 15. So kicking off this list of foods to be wary of, according to our source, is item number 15, sweets and sugary desserts.
Yeah, the source claims that while we often connect refined sugar with comfort, maybe a little pick-me-up, eating too much after 60 turns it into a quiet enemy for leg health. The main reason it points to, sugar setting off widespread inflammatory reactions in the body.
Okay, inflammation again. We hear that word a lot in health talks. How does the source say that specifically hits the legs?
Well, the source is pretty direct. It claims this chronic inflammation makes your legs feel sensitive, uncomfortable, and actually more prone to deterioration over time. And beyond just inflammation, it links too much sugar directly to higher insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Remind us what that means in simple terms.
Think of insulin like a key. It unlocks your muscle cells to let glucose, that's energy, inside. The source says insulin resistance is like that key getting sticky or maybe not fitting the lock quite right. So it depletes muscular energy because the fuel can't get in effectively. Your muscles become less efficient.
And when your leg muscles can't get fuel properly, they weaken.
They naturally weaken, yes. The source also points to weight gain from sweets, which seems kind of obvious, right?
Yeah, extra weight means extra strain on the legs.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes this. Every extra pound adds strain not just to the muscles, but the joints too. It's not just about discomfort. This increased load, especially when you combine it with the natural muscle loss that happens with age, contributes to wear, tear, and a deeper feeling of weakness.
The source mentions something else too. Toxins.
It does. It claims sugar intake increases the body's generation of toxins, which it says further aggravates those inflammatory responses. This makes it harder for your legs to stay functional and firm.
What really caught my eye was the source even connecting sugar to circulation problems. How does that work?
That's a really key point it raises. It explicitly states that high sugar intake directly influences blood flow. It actually increases the likelihood of vascular disorders that can restrict circulation down to your lower limbs.
So less blood getting to the leg muscles.
Right. And when blood flow is poor, your leg muscles get less oxygen and fewer nutrients. The source says this hinders tissue renewal and slows down recovery, even after just minor exertion. The way the source puts it is quite memorable. It suggests the immediate pleasure of that dessert could end up being too expensive for your health in terms of your long-term leg function.
And nutritionally, sweets are offering basically nothing to help the muscles.
Precisely. The source calls them empty calories. They're deficient in essential nutrients like proteins and magnesium, which are absolutely crucial for muscle maintenance and function. They give you energy, sure, but no building blocks. And this kind of diet, the source argues, especially as you age, directly causes muscular mass loss, a major enemy of mobility.
It even mentioned chemical additives in factory sweets.
Yeah, things like dyes and preservatives. The source claims that these can further aggravate inflammation and disrupt the body's natural balance, negatively influencing the whole muscular system.
It really makes you wonder, that sensitive or tired feeling you might get in your legs after maybe indulging a bit too much. The source connects that directly to the inflammation and reduced energy. It suggests even an innocent indulgence could be quietly undermining your independence.
It's the cumulative effect, isn't it? That's what the source wants us to think about. Their suggestion isn't necessarily never eat dessert again, but maybe swap them for more natural options. Cinnamon on fruit, maybe, or homemade desserts where you actually control the sugar.
Making wiser choices, essentially.
Exactly. Choices that actively support your body rather than working against it.
Okay, moving from those sugary threats, the source lists item number 14, fried foods. It acknowledges they're hard to resist, but says the damage after 60 just cannot be overlooked.
Yeah, the big issue the source raises with fried foods is their high content of trans fats and saturated fats. These specific fats are directly linked in the source material to raising inflammatory markers all through the body.
There's that inflammation word again. It seems to be a running theme with the foods this source flags.
It certainly is a major theme, and the source connects this inflammation directly to stiffness, more discomfort, and a higher chance of damage in the leg muscles and joints. But the fats from fried foods, according to the source, they also hit your blood flow pretty hard.
How do they do that? Does the source explain the mechanism?
It claims these fats compromise circulation, making it harder for your muscles to get enough oxygen. Poor circulation, like we just talked about with sugar, means your muscles are starved for the oxygen and nutrients they need to heal and stay strong.
So slower recovery, weaker muscles.
Right. And furthermore, the source claims fried foods contribute to blood vessel blockage. This restricts the flow of vital nutrients to the leg muscles even more, weakening their support structure and speeding up joint wear. The source ties this directly to feeling that weariness in your legs.
And it calls out specific examples, doesn't it?
It does. Donuts, chicken nuggets, French fries, they get named as key offenders. The source argues that eating these regularly just overwhelms both your skeletal system and your circulatory system. That immediate taste satisfaction, it suggests, doesn't really justify the potential long-term health harm.
The source asks, have you noticed your legs feeling maybe more sore or heavier after a meal that was high in fried foods? It claims this isn't just in your head, it's your body literally responding to that overload of harmful fats and the inflammation they kick off.
Yeah, it's compelling how it links these specific foods to common feelings people have. The source also mentions something else, just digesting fried foods takes a lot of energy.
Right.
So that leaves less energy available for your muscles to actually function, which can directly add to that feeling of leg weariness. And just like the sugary stuff, eating fried foods regularly is associated with weight gain, which just compounds the strain on your legs and joints.
And again, low in the nutrients muscles actually need.
Exactly. Low nutritional density, very few vitamins, minerals, proteins that are essential for strengthening muscles. This creates an imbalance, according to the source, that actually encourages the loss of muscle mass. And less muscle means your legs lose stability, lose rigidity. It directly affects your ability to carry your weight, climb stairs, or just walk securely.
So the source's advice is pretty clear. Avoid them or change how you cook.
Those are the tangible steps it suggests for maintaining mobility.
Okay, let's move down the list to item number 13, white bread. This one feels so normal, so everyday.
And that's exactly the source's warning. It argues white bread's impact, especially after 60, is far from benign. Because it's made from refined flour, stripped of nearly all its fiber and nutrients, it acts very differently in your body compared to whole grains.
How does that refined flour impact leg strength, according to the source? What's the mechanism?
It claims it's a carbohydrate that gets absorbed really quickly, causing rapid spikes in your blood glucose levels. These spikes, it argues, directly impact your muscular health, especially in the legs, leading to feelings of weariness and weakness. And because it's low in fiber and has that high glycemic index, it also contributes to insulin resistance.
So back to muscles not getting enough energy again.
Yes, exactly. The source states that insulin resistance impairs glucose getting into the muscle cells. That directly affects their energy supply and their strength. When your leg muscles get less energy, it's much harder to maintain their firmness. The source claims this can actually speed up muscle mass loss, something that happens naturally as we age, sure, but white bread, it argues, just makes it worse. It stops being just a neutral food and becomes, in the source's words, a cause of irritation.
And it lacks the nutrients that could actually help muscles, right?
Well, precisely. Low in proteins, low in minerals. The source says it offers no genuine help for muscle recovery. It suggests that for older adults who actually need more protein to fight off sarcopenia, that age-related muscle loss relying on white bread daily instead of choosing better options or making sure you get enough protein elsewhere is a mistake. It claims this practice depletes the body meal by meal, potentially leading to legs that feel unresistant, weary, and unsteady.
It sounds like it's not just about adding weight, although the source does mention that too.
It does mention weight, especially since white bread is often paired with things like butter, cheese, or sugary spreads. And that excess weight puts extra pressure on legs that might already be a bit more fragile with age. This increased burden, according to the source, leads to pain, inflammation, and a higher risk of injury. Ultimately, the source claims, white bread limits your mobility instead of supporting it.
It really highlights how maybe one slice seems harmless, but the source suggests the cumulative effect of these choices is where the real damage happens. If you feel like your legs are getting weaker, according to this material, even something as simple as your daily toast could be playing a role.
That's the significant connection the source is making, yes. But it does offer an upside, too. It points out there are loads of more nutritional substitutes available now. Whole grain breads, especially the naturally fermented ones, or those made with oats, flaxseed, rye. They provide essential fibers and nutrients.
And those help muscles.
They support muscles indirectly, promote better digestion, and help normalize blood sugar levels. The source suggests combining them with good proteins like eggs or healthy fats like avocado to make a really balanced meal. The message isn't give up bread, it's choose better bread. It can make a big difference.
Okay, transitioning from breads, the source moves to item number 12, alcoholic drinks. It makes a pretty strong claim here, saying alcohol becomes even more dangerous with age, particularly for muscle and joint health after 60.
Yeah, the source's argument is based on the idea that after 60, our bodies generally metabolize alcohol less efficiently. This just ramps up its negative effects. A key problem it highlights is how alcohol hinders the absorption of vital minerals.
Which minerals are most important for legs, according to the source?
It specifically calls out calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D, all absolutely crucial for bone density and muscle function. The source states that without enough of these, muscles weaken and bones get more brittle.
Which obviously increases the risk of falls and fractures.
Exactly. Major concerns for older adults. The source also points out that alcohol directly gets in the way of muscle repair processes.
So recovery takes longer if you exercise or just exert yourself.
Much longer, according to the source. Your body needs more time to restore tissues, leading to longer periods of pain and weariness, and a higher chance of damage from just repetitive use. The source also mentions alcohol causes dehydration.
Right.
And dehydration impairs muscular flexibility and promotes those really unpleasant leg cramps.
Wow, it seems to hit muscle health from so many angles.
Mm.
Poor nutrient absorption, slower repair, dehydration.
It really does. The source further links alcohol use to impaired liver function, noting the liver's role in making compounds vital for overall tissue health. And of course, it brings up weight gain again. Alcoholic drinks are often packed with calories, and the source claims they specifically encourage belly fat formation, which has its own set of health risks.
And that extra weight puts more stress on the legs and joints, doesn't it?
Precisely. Even in what might seem like moderate amounts, this extra weight strains the legs, demands more from the joints. The source argues that adding this strain on top of the natural decrease in muscle mass with aging can have catastrophic effects on your mobility and just your overall quality of life.
You know, have you ever noticed waking up feeling maybe more exhausted or just generally achy after a night with a few drinks? The source claims that physical feeling isn't just random. It's a direct reflection of the strain alcohol puts on your muscles and joints while your body tries to process it and deal with the inflammation and dehydration.
Yeah, it's positioning that common experience as a clear symptom. Regular alcohol use, the source claims, consistently raises the body's inflammatory levels. This doesn't just aggravate existing discomfort, it can also lower your desire to be physically active. Over time, the source says, this practice really undermines your ability to stay active and healthy, creating a kind of downward spiral of reduced mobility.
Okay, let's move on. Item number 11, processed meats. The source warns that their convenience, which is often a big draw, especially for older adults, masks grave leg health hazards.
Things like bacon, ham, sausages. The source states they're high in sodium and chemical preservatives. It claims these additives actively encourage chronic inflammation throughout the body.
So like sugar and fried foods, inflammation is a key villain here again.
Yes, the source definitely sees inflammation as a central issue with processed meats. It specifically links this inflammation to impacting joints, causing ongoing discomfort in your leg muscles, ankles, knees. It even suggests that stiffness many people feel when they wake up could be directly related to the inflammatory processes kicked off by these foods.
And it's not just inflammation.
No, beyond inflammation, processed meats have a high saturated fat content. The source claims this decreases blood flow to the muscles, raises negative cholesterol levels, and compromises your overall circulation.
So less nutrient-rich blood getting down to the leg muscles again.
Precisely. The source describes this poor irrigation, this poor blood flow, as depriving leg muscles of essential nutrition and oxygen. This impairs their ability to maintain themselves and regenerate after you use them. The stated outcome: a gradual weakening of your lower extremities, potentially restricting even basic daily tasks over time.
Sounds like these foods also make your body work harder in other ways, too.
They do. The source states these meals contribute to toxins building up in the body, which stresses the liver and kidneys. And those organs are vital for filtering out chemicals that, in the source's view, lead to muscular weariness. The preservatives themselves are also claimed to negatively affect glucose metabolism, which lowers the energy your muscles have available to function.
So it all adds up to feeling tired and heavy in the legs.
That's the picture the source paints: ongoing feelings of weariness and heaviness. It makes a very pointed statement here, saying that while convenience is tempting, especially as we age, dietary attention should really be doubled, and that convenience might be expensive when it comes to sacrificing quality of life.
That's a powerful way to frame it. What does it suggest instead?
It strongly recommends choosing healthier proteins. Think eggs, chicken, fish, lean cuts of beef as your primary sources. It even offers practical swaps. Maybe use avocado or olive oil instead of bacon fat, have cooked eggs instead of sausage, or use shredded chicken breast in sandwiches instead of ham.
Simple changes.
Yeah, and the source claims making these swaps lets your body adjust, and you'll actually notice your legs becoming lighter and more alive. It frames this as a reasonable deal between taste and freedom, pleasure and lifespan.
All right, number 10 on the list, instant noodles, another super convenient food item.
Indeed. But the source argues that while they seem great for ease, they pose significant concerns after 60, mainly because they're mostly refined flour and chemical additives, offering very little nutritional value despite being calorie-dense. Low in fiber, low in proteins, low in the micronutrients you need to preserve muscle mass.
And the salt content in instant noodles is notoriously high, right? Does the source focus on that?
Oh, absolutely. It points to the extremely high salt level, noting that just one serving can blow past half your daily recommended intake. And too much sodium, as we saw with processed meats, heavily encourages fluid retention.
And fluid retention impacts the legs. How, again?
The source claims it directly causes legs to become swollen and painful. Plus, excess sodium contributes to higher blood pressure, which hinders good blood flow to the muscles. This poor circulation, in turn, means muscle tissue becomes undernourished, weak, and recovers much slower after any exertion.
And what about all the chemical additives they contain?
The source mentions those two preservatives, colors, MSG, which it touches on separately later. These are often linked, it claims, to chronic inflammatory processes. Even low-grade inflammation, according to the source, can impair joint function and speed up muscle deterioration over time. This leads to more discomfort, stiffness, and mobility restrictions.
It really paints a picture of how quickly a so-called fast meal can undermine your physical ability day to day.
The source certainly makes that connection strongly. It also notes the impact on metabolism. Because they lack fiber, instant noodles have a high glycemic index, causing those rapid spikes in blood sugar we talked about. This glycemic instability, the source argues, messes with insulin activity, preventing your muscles from effectively using the energy available.
So muscles lack effective energy.
And they grow weak and tired quickly. The source claims relying on these foods can turn even a simple walk into a grueling struggle.
Okay, from instant noodles, let's move to item number 9. Industrially made cakes.
Ah, yes. The source uses some pretty evocative language here, saying they smell like youth, taste like joy, but conceal components that seriously harm leg health, especially for older folks. The core issue, according to the source, they're packed with processed sugar, hydrogenated fats, and synthetic preservatives that mess up your metabolism and irritate the body.
It sounds like they combine the problems of sugar and the bad fats we've already discussed.
They really do, reinforcing those issues. The sugar, the source claims, disturbs insulin function and encourages body fat buildup. It describes this mix as creating a bad metabolic setting for preserving muscular strength. And the hydrogenated fat, or trans fats, often used for better taste and shelf life, they get specifically called out.
Why are they so bad, according to this source?
The source states these trans fats lower your good cholesterol and raise the bad cholesterol, significantly compromising blood flow, especially to your extremities, like your legs.
And inflammation is a factor here too, I assume.
Yes. The source directly links eating these cakes regularly to persistent inflammation, calling it a key cause of muscular weakness and joint discomfort. Emulsifiers, stabilizers, dyes. They're listed as potential culprits that can influence the immune system and trigger inflammatory reactions, which the source claims mostly impact your leg joints. The result: more discomfort, less mobility, and potentially a cycle of being less active, which just drives more muscle loss.
And like other processed foods, they don't provide the actual building blocks your body needs.
Right. The source notes their lack of high nutritional density. They're heavy on calories, but really deficient in crucial nutrients like proteins, calcium, magnesium, things vital for both muscle and bone health. The source uses a great analogy here, comparing eating this kind of food often to trying to power your muscles, your body's engine, with tainted gasoline.
So the engine sputters.
Exactly. It claims the result is predictable: failures, weariness, slowness in function.
It really hits home how convenience can lead to choices that work against your long-term well-being, doesn't it?
That's the source's strong message. It contrasts this with making homemade cakes using whole flours, fruits, natural oils. The source claims these can be just as practical, really, and the crucial difference is their long-term effect. It suggests with better ingredients, your leg muscles will appreciate the support, leading to more firmness, a better attitude, and more vigor.
Okay, item number 8. Ultra-processed cheeses. Things like cheese spreads, those processed slices, maybe melted cheeses for nachos?
Yeah, those types. The source claims that while they look convenient and taste good, they mask grave risks for maintaining leg strength after 60. It highlights their high levels of sodium and saturated fat, stating these components affect the muscular and vascular system twice over.
How so?
While the sodium promotes fluid retention and increases blood pressure, while the saturated fat undermines the flexibility of your blood vessels, impairing circulation.
And the combined effect on the legs is?
The source claims this mix results in legs getting more bloated, uncomfortable, and heavy. Plus, these processed cheeses often contain preservatives and phosphates. The source states these can negatively alter your body's mineral balance, directly affecting how you absorb and use calcium and magnesium minerals, absolutely vital for muscle contraction and bone health.
So they could actually interfere with how your muscles physically move and function.
Yes, that's the claim. Incorrect absorption or availability of these minerals leads to common signs like muscular weariness, joint discomfort, even those awful nighttime cramps. The source notes that the large, frequently used leg muscles are often the first places to show these warning signals.
And they're not great sources of protein either.
No, another issue, according to the source, is that unlike traditional or artisanal cheeses, these ultra-processed versions lack beneficial grade proteins. They also undergo industrial methods that just lower their overall nutritional density.
So they're less effective at providing what muscles need to stay strong, even if they have some protein.
Exactly. The source argues that while you're eating calories, your body isn't getting the high-quality amino acids it needs to sustain muscle mass. And it identifies muscle loss as one of the primary drivers of functional decline and dependency as people age. The source states that this lack of necessary nutrients over time also contributes to bone weakness and a general decline in muscular performance.
Which makes everyday things harder.
Yeah, it claims this is why simple activities like short walks take more effort and why stairs can feel like a real barrier.
The source asks a pointed question here. Have you noticed feeling heavier, maybe less eager to move, after a meal high in processed foods? It claims this isn't just a vague feeling, it's genuine, resulting from the demineralizing and inflammatory action of these foods. It makes a striking point suggesting everything can be connected to the kind of cheese that goes on your toast.
It's really stressing the cumulative, widespread impact of what seem like small, everyday dietary choices, isn't it? The source's suggested alternative is to swap these ultra-processed options for fresher, less processed cheeses, maybe ricotta, cottage cheese, or even just a simple mayonnaise cheese, which it implies offer better nutritional value without all the negatives.
Okay, item number 7, industrial ice creams. Always a popular treat, especially when it's warm out.
But the source claims these pose a great danger to leg health after 60, labeling them as very caloric and inflammatory. They contain those saturated fats combined with significant levels of refined sugar.
How does this specific combination, sugar and saturated fat, impact the energy available for your legs?
The source explains that this type of food causes really rapid increases in blood sugar, followed by equally rapid drops. This constant up and down, this instability in blood sugar, it argues, severely endangers your muscular energy stability. It makes your legs feel weak, heavy, and really susceptible to exhaustion.
And the saturated fat itself is also bad for circulation.
Yes, the poor quality saturated fat is explicitly stated as harming the cardiovascular system. This circulation deficit means oxygenated blood has trouble reaching your extremities, including your leg muscles. The source claims this can result in sensations like numbness, tingling, even ongoing cramps. Over the long term, this chronic circulation problem contributes to muscular weakening, a loss of mobility, and a higher risk of falls.
The source adds a rather poignant note here. All this time, we think we are only treating ourselves.
It hits home. And like other processed foods on this list, they contain artificial additives that trigger inflammation.
Right. Colors, emulsifiers.
Correct. Artificial colors, emulsifiers, thickeners, commonly found in industrial ice cream, are listed as aggravating bodily inflammation. The source describes this as a key cause of damage to both joint and muscle tissue. It also claims that eating these items regularly can encourage digestive and hormonal abnormalities.
And those abnormalities affect nutrient absorption.
That's the argument. These abnormalities, it claims, directly influence the absorption of vital nutrients you need for muscle development and overall health. So not only do they lack nutrients themselves, they might actually prevent you from properly absorbing the good stuff you get from other foods.
Double whammy then.
Pretty much. The source highlights that because they're rich in empty calories and lack nutrition, your body simply cannot maintain its stability and strength. They don't provide what's needed to build muscles, mend tissues, or nourish joints. The source claims this is why that feeling of weariness in the legs sticks around and can even get stronger. The impact on legs, according to the source, is clear. Less firmness, more everyday pain, less tolerance for physical activity. It states every mouthful robs the body of the opportunity to fortify itself.
Wow, it definitely makes you think twice before grabbing that tub from the freezer. Okay, moving on to item number 6. Milk chocolates. Another incredibly popular snack or treat.
Yeah, the source acknowledges they're part of many people's routines, but it claims regular use can have a more serious effect than it first appears, particularly on the legs of people over 60. And like many other items we've discussed, they're high in sugar and saturated fat.
And that combination, again, promotes inflammation.
Yes, the source links this high sugar and saturated fat content directly to promoting inflammatory mechanisms that influence the joints and muscles in your legs. It also claims this specific combination creates a kind of metabolic overload.
Metabolic overload. What does that mean for muscular power, according to the source?
The source claims this overload actually promotes the decline of muscular power. The result it describes is legs that feel exhausted, lack vigor, and are more susceptible to aches and stiffness. It also notes that milk chocolate typically has quite a low cocoa content, and cocoa is where the beneficial antioxidants are found.
And the highly processed versions add even more issues, I bet.
They do. The source highlights that most commercial milk chocolates are highly processed, loaded with preservatives and artificial sweeteners. It claims these additives can potentially damage the liver and pancreas and disrupt the absorption of vital nutrients needed for muscle health. The simple sugars they contain get absorbed really quickly, causing those sharp insulin surges we talked about earlier.
And those surges are particularly bad if you're already struggling to maintain muscle mass as you age.
Precisely. The source describes this insulin volatility as catastrophic for people finding it challenging to keep lean muscle mass. Furthermore, milk chocolate consumption is sometimes linked to stomach weight growth, gaining belly fat.
Right.
And the source claims this abdominal fat aggravates the strain on your lower extremities, promoting wear and tear on the joints of your knees, hips, and ankles.
The source really contrasts the idea of this being just a simple, harmless routine with the potentially more serious effect it claims it can have over time. It's quite a wake-up call.
It's definitely asking you to look beyond that immediate pleasure to the potential long-term cost. But the source does suggest healthy replacements are possible. It states that high cocoa chocolates, eaten in moderation, can actually provide beneficial antioxidants and flavonoids. These might help circulation and support muscles, maybe even work positively with vascular health.
So dark chocolate in moderation might be okay.
That seems to be the implication. The key, according to the source, is making the right selection and being mindful of the amount. It's about awareness and balance.
Okay, item number 5. Canned foods. Super convenient, we know that, but the source seems to have some major concerns here too.
Yeah, the source warns that the ingredients often found in canned foods may greatly endanger leg health in old age. It points specifically to chemical preservatives like sodium benzoate and nitrite, along with added colors, excessive salt, and other chemicals commonly used.
And these chemicals are highly inflammatory, according to the source.
Yes, that's the claim. Highly inflammatory, directly harming both muscle and vascular health. The source states that frequent consumption actually impedes muscle regeneration and makes it impossible for muscles to get properly oxygenated. And on top of that, the extra salt found in most canned foods heavily promotes fluid retention.
So that feeling of heavy or uncomfortable legs, that might be linked to things like canned soups or vegetables we eat regularly.
That's exactly the connection the source is making. It identifies fluid retention as a primary reason for that feeling of heavy, uncomfortable legs. It states this can not only cause pain, but might also signal inadequate circulation and tissue inflammation. And for people with hypertension, which is common after 60, the source notes that the extra salt from canned foods puts additional stress on the cardiovascular system, further compromising nutrient supply to the muscles.
And the canning process itself affects the food's nutritional value.
Yes, the source notes a significant decline in nutritional quality during the canning process. Even if you start with healthy ingredients like meats or vegetables, the procedures involved strip away most of the inherent nutrients. The source claims what you're often left with is a diet low in essential minerals and vitamins, but high in substances it refers to as poisons.
Poisons, that's strong language.
It is, and the source argues your body then has to expend energy fighting to get rid of this metabolic stress, which depletes your overall energy reserves and compromises muscular performance.
The source suggests that maybe your food choices are more to blame for ongoing weariness and leg weakness than you might think. It specifically warns that the convenience versus risk trade-off with canned food, in its view, just doesn't pay off, given the potential health consequences.
It's a very strong caution against prioritizing convenience over nutritional quality here. It also raises another point, the aluminum used in some cans. The source suggests this can build up in the body over time.
And that's bad.
It claims this accumulation has the potential to harm the neurological system and muscular function, possibly increasing the likelihood of falls, imbalances, and a gradual weakening of the legs. The source strongly recommends avoiding canned items whenever possible, choosing fresh, frozen, or naturally preserved alternatives instead. It claims cooking with genuine ingredients offers nearly instant advantages in how your body feels and works, ultimately safeguarding your autonomy and quality of life.
And finally, item number 4 in this list of food culprits: filled cookies and processed snacks. The source doesn't pull any punches here, calling them real aggressors.
No, it doesn't. The source claims that for people over 60, regularly eating these snacks can actively speed up leg strength loss. It blames their composition, often full of artificial substances like dyes, flavorings, preservatives, stabilizers. According to the source, these aggravate the body and put stress on vital organs like the liver and kidneys.
How do these artificial substances specifically attack the legs, according to the source?
It states they directly disrupt circulation and the absorption of nutrients that are necessary for your musculature. It emphasizes that these snacks are typically low in essential minerals, proteins, and fiber, while being very high in calories. The source describes it as a lot of calories and very little nourishment.
Which is especially bad as you get older.
Exactly. Because older bodies are less efficient at retaining nutrients than younger ones, they actually need a richer diet just to offset normal muscle loss. The source argues this kind of snack-heavy diet only accelerates that age-related decline.
And trans fats make an appearance again with these snacks.
Yes. Hydrogenated fat, or trans fat, gets specifically called out by the source as a key inflammatory factor in modern diets. It's claimed they not only contribute to blocking arteries, but also significantly hinder the flow of oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to your muscles. This poor irrigation, as we've seen with other items on the list, results in discomfort, weariness, and sometimes that feeling of unsteadiness or fragility, the source says, that's imposed quietly over time.
And fluid retention is another issue tied to these snacks.
It is. The source points out that the high sodium content in many processed snacks contributes to fluid retention. This makes lower limb edema, that swelling in the legs and ankles, worse. Swollen legs, the source notes, are obvious indicators of a problem. The source argues that the combination of a poor diet lacking nutrients and compromised circulation sets the stage for issues like varicose veins, chronic aches, and that persistent feeling of weightiness when you walk.
It's quite a list of problems stemming from what might seem like simple, apparently innocuous appetizers, as the source calls them.
Exactly. The source also highlights the metabolic impact these snacks cause, those rapid increases and quick drops in glucose levels. This cycle weakens the body and, paradoxically, creates a hunger cycle, often leading you to reach for more of the same kinds of snacks.
A vicious cycle.
Pretty much. The source concludes that this negative cycle decreases muscular energy and promotes weight growth, ultimately diminishing your capacity to keep strong, healthy, functional legs the more you rely on these products. It does suggest, though, that replacing these with healthier, natural snack bars, for instance, can totally alter the situation for the better.
Wow. So we've worked our way through the source's entire list of culinary culprits, from sugary desserts right down to processed snacks. It's detailed the various ways this material claims they can undermine leg health, after 60 focusing on things like inflammation, poor circulation, energy depletion, nutrient deficiency, and just plain added strain. Before we get to the really anticipated two worst vitamins, the source briefly mentions item number 3 on its list, which is MSG, or monosodium glutamate.
Yes, it includes MSG, which you often find used as a flavor enhancer in things like ready-made seasonings, instant noodles, again, packet soups, frozen meals. It just touches on its potential impact before moving to the vitamins. The source claims that regular intake of MSG can be particularly harmful to leg muscles.
How does it suggest MSG affects the muscles? What's the mechanism there?
The source suggests MSG might affect neurotransmitters that control muscle contraction, working via the neurological system. It claims that people who are more susceptible might experience symptoms like muscle aches, headaches, maybe tingling sensations, weariness, stiffness, even slight tremors.
And inflammation, too.
Yes, it also links MSG to persistent bodily inflammation, which it says can affect joints, muscles, and blood vessels. This compromises muscular function and circulation in your extremities. This poorly oxygenated state, according to the source, raises the likelihood of muscular weakness, cramping, and loss of mobility over time. It also notes that the high sodium often found with MSG can aggravate fluid retention and leg edema, similar to the issues we saw with other processed foods.
And it impacts energy metabolism as well.
Yes, the source claims MSG can alter how your muscles consume glucose, lowering their efficacy in transforming energy into strength. This, it warns, might eventually contribute to muscular mass loss and increase reliance on others for daily tasks. The source also cautions about hidden labels. MSG can be listed under different names and recommends opting for natural flavors over artificial seasonings whenever you can. So that gives us a little context before we hit the final two items.
All right. Here we are. This is the core claim from the hook we started with. Items number 2 and 1 on the source's list, the 2 world vitamins. The source explicitly states that the reality about these supplements could actually shock you, especially since you might be taking them right now with the very best intentions, believing you're doing something good for your body, perhaps specifically for your bones.
Let's unpack these two surprising suspects then, according to this source. Number 2 is excess vitamin A.
Vitamin A. But wait, we hear all the time that vitamin A is essential for health, good for eyesight, immunity, skin.
Absolutely, and the source acknowledges it's necessary. However, its warning is very specifically about too much vitamin A, particularly when that excess comes from supplements, not from food. The source claims that after 60, the body often struggles more to metabolize and get rid of excess vitamin A, which can lead to a harmful buildup.
Where does this excess vitamin A build up, according to the source? And what does it claim it does in the body?
The source specifically mentions buildup occurring in the liver and the joints. It claims this buildup can actually inflame muscular tissues and actively hinder the absorption of other absolutely vital minerals. It lists magnesium and calcium specifically. Buildup in the liver, according to the source, could also impair your body's ability to generate energy efficiently. And on top of that, excess vitamin A is linked by the source to bone demineralization.
Okay, so how does this combination of effects, inflammation, hindered mineral absorption, maybe impaired energy, bone issues, how does that specifically show up in the legs, according to the source?
The source states that muscle discomfort, particularly felt in the legs and back, is one of the most common signs of vitamin A hypervitaminosis, which just means excess vitamin A. It notes that this discomfort is frequently mistaken for just normal signs of aging, maybe arthritis or spinal issues, when it could potentially be linked to this nutrient imbalance.
So things like muscle weakness.
Yes, reports of muscular weakness, difficulty climbing stairs, struggling with walking, or even just trouble getting up from a sitting position, these are presented as direct indicators of this disturbed nutritional balance that the source associates with having too much vitamin A.
So that weakness or difficulty you might be feeling could potentially be linked to something you're taking thinking it's healthy, not just normal aging or some other condition.
Yeah.
That's quite a thought.
It's a really powerful implication the source is making here, isn't it? It claims that when the absorption of crucial minerals like calcium and magnesium is hindered by excess vitamin A, your muscles simply cannot contract and relax correctly. This, it states, promotes weariness, spasms, and cramps, especially in the legs. The impaired energy generation from potential liver buildup, according to the source, further compromises muscular function, leading to a gradual decline in your overall mobility and strength.
And the bone demineralization.
That's a big one too, especially in areas like the legs and hips, which bear significant weight. It weakens the bones and raises the likelihood of fractures. This risk, the source points out, is even more serious if someone already has conditions like osteopenia or osteoporosis.
It's really striking that discomfort or weakness might be misinterpreted when, according to the source, it could be linked to this potential excess vitamin A.
It's a critical point the source emphasizes, and its recommendation and warning are very, very strong. Vitamin A supplements should be used only under strict medical guidance and in precisely regulated amounts. The source identifies self-medication with supplements as a key driver of these potentially hidden issues.
So getting it from food is okay.
Yes, it argues that a balanced diet, including foods naturally rich in vitamin A, think liver, egg yolk, whole milk, carrots, pumpkin, can entirely eliminate the need for supplements. The risk, the source claims, really starts with exaggeration, especially from highly enriched foods or those potent supplements. It stresses that your total intake from all sources, including any multivitamins you might be taking, has to be watched closely.
Okay, moving to the final item, number 1 on their list, and perhaps the most discussed and most surprising, excess vitamin D.
Yes, vitamin D, a vitamin that's often widely advised for older adults, strongly linked to bone health, immune function. Everyone talks about it. However, the source issues a significant warning that too much can have major negative effects, even specifically on the legs. And like vitamin A, the source primarily attributes this danger to excessive supplementation rather than getting it from your diet or reasonable sun exposure.
How exactly does the source claim that excessive vitamin D causes problems, particularly in the legs? What's the mechanism?
The source explains that vitamin D hypervitaminosis happens when there's a harmful buildup in the body. This excess, it states, leads to dangerously high levels of calcium in the blood, a condition called hypercalcemia.
Okay, too much calcium in the blood. What does that do?
Well, the source claims this hypercalcemia can cause unnecessary and damaging calcification of soft tissues throughout your body. This includes muscles and tendons, key components of your leg structure. Furthermore, the source notes that taking very large doses of vitamin D can actually harm your kidneys, which are responsible for regulating your body's mineral balance.
Calcification of muscles and tendons. That sounds like it would directly lead to stiffness, wouldn't it?
The source makes that exact connection. It states that muscle discomfort is a key sign of vitamin D imbalance and specifically links hypercalcemia to leg stiffness, sometimes a burning sensation in the muscles, cramps, and joint discomfort. The source argues that high calcium levels directly impact both your muscles and your nerves, compromising the electrical impulses needed for coordinated body movements.
So movement becomes harder, less fluid.
Right. It claims this calcification process means areas like your knees, your calves, your thighs can get stiffer and less flexible over time, becoming uncomfortable when you put effort on them. The source's phrasing is quite impactful. What ought to be protective, referring to vitamin D, can become one of wear and restriction simply due to excess. It also notes that elderly adults taking high amounts without medical supervision are at higher risk here.
And the impact on the kidneys you mentioned, how does that affect the legs?
The source states that poor filtration and retention of substances resulting from kidney issues potentially caused or worsened by excess vitamin D can aggravate leg edema, that's swelling, plus muscular discomfort, and contribute to a general feeling of weakness. It describes this as a potential negative feedback loop. Taking more vitamin D leads to more calcium in the blood, potentially impacting kidney function, which in turn makes muscle difficulties in the legs worse.
So the deep irony here is that vitamin D is often recommended for older people, taken with genuinely good intentions to help bones. But according to this source, taking too much, usually through supplements without checking levels, can cause the very stiffness, discomfort, and weakness you were hoping to avoid.
That's precisely the critical point the source is making, and why it labels excessive vitamin D, particularly from supplements, as one of the worst culprits for leg health when it's not managed correctly. The source's recommendation is extremely clear and strong on this. Vitamin D supplementation should always be tailored specifically to an individual's needs.
Based on blood tests, presumably.
Exactly, based on proper lab tests and medical advice. It stresses that it's crucial to understand this point, as many individuals mistakenly believe vitamin D is universally beneficial and just consume huge amounts on their own without any guidance. The source warns emphatically that excess can be just as dangerous, or maybe even more so in some contexts, than having a deficiency.
And just to reiterate, the source's main point on both these vitamins, vitamin A and vitamin D, when it comes to the specific health of your legs as you age, the claimed result of excess from supplements taken without proper guidance can be a significant loss of movement and ultimately independence.
It frames it as a really serious potential consequence, one that warrants significant attention and caution.
Okay, that was a truly expansive look through the source material you provided. We've covered everything from common foods we might eat every day to some, well, really surprising warnings about vitamins.
We really have taken a deep dive into this specific source's perspective, haven't we? Exploring how various common foods, from the sugary and fried items to processed goods like meats, cheeses, snacks, even canned items, alongside what it identifies as excessive intake of seemingly beneficial vitamins like A and D, can contribute, according to this source, to leg weakness, pain, stiffness, and mobility issues after 60.
And as you noted throughout, it wasn't just a list of bad foods. The source really tried to lay out the why behind its claims, connecting the dots between things like chronic inflammation, poor circulation, metabolic disruptions, nutritional deficiencies, and those very real physical sensations you might feel in your legs, that weariness, the swelling, the stiffness, the pain.
It didn't just point fingers, it offered specific things to be aware of and suggested alternatives, or at least emphasized necessary caution, particularly stressing that need for medical advice when it comes to vitamin supplementation.
Yeah, what's particularly striking, I think, from this source's viewpoint, is how things widely perceived as just plain healthy, like vitamins or simple comforts, like sweets or snacks, can have these surprising negative effects when the context isn't considered. Things like where it comes from, food versus supplement, how much you're consuming, and individual factors like your age and underlying health, they all matter, according to this source.
It really challenges you to think differently about what you put in your body, doesn't it?
It really does. Perhaps the most powerful takeaway from this source, something for you to maybe mull over after this deep dive, is that sometimes the greatest insights for maintaining your health and independence, especially for something as fundamental as the strength and mobility of your legs, come not just from knowing what beneficial things you should add to your diet or routine, like taking certain supplements,
Right.
but from being acutely mindful of, or even deciding to avoid, things that might be actively working against you. Even if that means challenging some long-held habits or, counterintuitive perceptions about what's actually healthy.
It certainly shifts the focus, doesn't it? From simply adding more beneficial things to carefully evaluating what might actually be causing harm in your current routine.
So what stands out to you from this deep dive into the source's claims about leg health?
That's the key question, isn't it? Is it the link the source makes between, say, fried food and that feeling of leg heaviness? Or the potential impact of processed cheese on morning stiffness? Or maybe it's that most surprising warning about taking too many vitamins without getting proper medical guidance first.
There's certainly a lot in this source material to consider and reflect on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.